Hi, Steve.
Good to be with you, Glenn. Thank you.
The first time I met you, we were having dinner at a friend's house, and I had no idea that you and your wife were going to be there. And I sat next to your wife, who lets her hair go gray, like I let my hair go gray, and you do. She is not somebody that is using Botox or having surgery. She is what everybody's, what everybody remembers their mom being like and normal women being like. And she sat down and talked to me at dinner about what I should expect now in my life for my children. And I left there and I talked to my wife on the way home. I said, she's one of the most decent people I know. How do you get there being incredibly wealthy and not lose your way? How does it happen, Steve?
Well, that was the wisest decision I think I made when I proposed and she said yes. She was American but brought up in Europe. Her father was American, her mother is Belgian, and so she saw a lot of the world. Her father was a minister, and she, I guess, the values came to her, but she's very down to earth. She raised our 5 daughters very well, and she raised me very well, and she's kept us all together. So very, very down-to-earthness is a wonderful thing in this world.
Here is the thing that is not in fashion at all. How do we get back to it? How do we teach a society moral sentiments when all they're interested in is the wealth of a nation?
Well, I think ultimately, and I think Adam Smith understood this, and you've made reference to it, ultimately wealth creation comes from a moral basis. Free markets are about meeting the needs and wants of other people. Free markets are about creating resources, about bringing people together for a shared purpose. It's about breaking down barriers. You may not love your neighbor, but you want to do business with your neighbor. In other words, Glenn, all the things that big government says it does, free markets actually do. Human nature, we all know, and our founders understood this, human nature has a very real underside, very real passions there. And free markets enable those passions to be directed in a way where you might think you're helping yourself, but in doing so, you're interacting and doing things with others. It has you focus on the future, brings about more trust. Just one example, we take it for granted. If you start a business, you want to bring in the best people possible. That's fairly new in human affairs, that you trust anyone beyond your immediate family or community or ethnic group. And free markets, without us realizing it, breaks down those barriers. So those who disparage free markets, they're disparaging bringing out the best in people.
Well, I will tell you, though, that even in today's world, I was talking to a friend who was getting a rather sizable loan, and I said, really? And he said, I've got 3 banks going for my loan. He said, one of them is a local bank, and they are making me jump through all kinds of hoops. I have to do extra stuff for them. And I said, please, if you're going to take that loan, please take it with that bank, because that bank is exercising moral caution. They're not just going out and trying to get anybody's business at any cost. They're exercising some common sense, and that's the kind of moral leadership that we need in our businesses. Otherwise, it just doesn't work.
Well, again, it's based on standards. And one of the things that I think has helped undermine things in recent decades, this will sound strange, but Keynes understood it and Lenin understood it, and that is when you undermine your currency, when you can't trust the currency anymore, it undermines social trust. And when you undermine social trust, then by golly, you get conditions that we saw in the 30s. We saw it begin to happen again in the 70s. We're seeing happen again today. And just as you have 60 minutes in an hour, 12 inches in a foot, a dollar should be stable in value. And when it isn't, Lenin said, not 1 in a million people understand the destructive forces at work. Societies that don't have a stable currency, Glenn, over time, you do end up with more social disabilities, you end up with more crime. People don't trust, and when you undermine trust, bad things happen.
I heard a guy, he was a refugee from Cuba 40 years ago, been living in the country, and he said, you people don't understand because you've never lost freedom before. How do you get people to understand? Because you would know better than I would, Steve, but I think we're one major event in the world, and the whole world spirals out of control. How do you get people here in the United States who have never lost freedom, have never really had tough times in this lifetime? How do you get them to understand this is really not going to be a normal scenario that's coming your way?
Well, I think a lot of Americans do understand it, and I think we saw a good example of it in 2010 when grassroots rose up and brought about those elections in the state level and congressional level. That didn't happen in 2012 for a variety of reasons, but it's going to happen again. People, I think there is, despite what's happened in our schools, tens of millions of Americans understand what the stakes are, and as Obamacare kicks in, as the stagnation continues, they're going to rise up again, and they're going to take control. The Republican establishment, as you know, is quaking in its boots.
I hope so.
They know a wave is coming of citizens taking matters in their own hands, and so we're going to do it. And people like you and others who get the word out there about the moral basis of free markets, about the freedoms that we have, I think you're going to begin to see a change. But it has to come from we the people. It has to be bottoms up. It's not going to come from the elites. It's not going to come from Europe or Asia. It's got to come from we the people. That's how we got a revolution, by the way. We had a long tradition of letter writing, petitioning, pamphlets and the like. That's what set the foundation for the revolution. Just didn't happen overnight. People were imbued with certain ideas about freedom, and when those seemed to be threatened, they rose up.
All right. Steve Forbes, thank you very much. I would
Thank you, Glenn.
You bet. Thank you. I would contend that the letter writing came after we found our own moral compass. Encourage yourself to take a look at your moral compass and make sure it is pointing to true north. Back in a minute.